welcome to another video from the Nana Akua show. 23rd December it was, and still only managed 6 minutes despite the promises to extend it from the producer, but that producer's left now, so I don't know where we'll be with the new one. Interesting show, really. I mean, we had to keep it fairly light, and as you will see. But I wanted to get a message across, basically that more CO2 is good. That was my main message that I tried to get across. But I also tried to combine that with a message about natural climate change and the fact, and it is a fact, that the Little Ice Age actually was the coldest period in the Holocene to date. That's about 11,000 years we're into it. And I'll explain the Holocene, and I'll explain in some depth these points. And that we naturally recovered from the Little Ice Age. We were recovering 160 years before, before the Industrial Revolution even started, let alone got going. It didn't really get going in mankind, the CO2, in any significant quantities until the 1960s, actually. But we had a lot of weather changes in that period from 1850 to then. And so you'll see what I've done here. But I'm going to actually use this as a way of as a way of training you, if you like, or letting you see how we can attack the narrative in a number of areas. So I'll be going slightly off track to explain these things in some depth, which I hope you'll find more interesting this way, because I'm using the show as a means of explaining things as they come up, as it were, in the climate change narrative. I had a couple of people on the train on the way there who, completely against me, very left-wing, and completely against the narrative, but not able to give any evidence, just total blind belief as normal, which is what you're going to meet everywhere. So anyway, let's get started with the show, and I'll stop and dissect as we proceed.
Good afternoon, 24 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for Climate Control, where we unpick the debate around the climate. And today, I'm asking if we can expect snow over the Christmas period, plus all the climate predictions for 2024. The Met Office has issued 54-hour snow and ice warnings as Britain can expect a polar storm in the run-up to the big day. But will it really be a white Christmas?
Well, that is really quite an incredible prediction by the Met Office. I mean, it's 23rd of December. We're 2 days away from Christmas Day, if you like, and they're predicting this incredible snow thing. It's typical. This is absolutely typical of the drama in which they try to inject things. What we've actually got is a little bit of snow in the Cairngorms there, where they ski in Scotland, which we get most years. Nothing else. But no, we have to dramatise everything. They really have been taken over. The inmates have taken over the asylum, quite frankly, in the Met Office, and even Jim Dale has to say they're wrong. So, we got progress here. The Met Office are actually wrong. Let me just show you this diagram. Now, on this diagram here, you'll see two weather forecasts. They're about 5 or 6 years apart, actually. The dates are on them. And you'll see that the hottest one is actually the one that's all green. And the coolest one of the two is the one that's all red. This is how it's going. You're meant to be now fully brainwashed, and you're meant to accept and swallow this nonsense in weather forecasts. But this time, as you'll see, Jim Dale and I both agreed. I mean, I'm not completely novice at weather as such, because I've even given talks on sailing weather to sailing clubs. And only because the Met Office forecasts were terribly wrong for the sailing club, and my forecasts were proving okay. So I was invited to give talks to explain, how. And this was after a particular trip got wrecked, a particular regatta got wrecked because a good Met Office forecast for it, and me warning them not to go. So I'm not a novice at weather, but I hand over to Jim his weather things. He does it every day, and he must know more than me about it. But on this time, at this occasion, we both agree the Met Office are getting, well, they're wrong. Okay.
Well, I'm joined now by Jim Dale, meteorologist and social commentator. Yes, that is really him there. And also Paul Burgess, climate scientist. Yes, welcome. He's got a little elf on his shoulder. Yeah. So, well, we'll go to the elephant in the corner, but you are actually what are you, Jim?
I'm Dasher today.
You're Dasher. Where are you looking through? Are you looking through your nostrils?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. I've come all the way from Greenland.
Yeah?
Top of Greenland today.
Yeah.
To give you a bit of snow story. Do you want to know what's going on?
Yeah, go on, Jim.
OK, so that message from the Met Office is wrong. That's the start of it. The only places that are likely to see snow on Christmas Day are going to be the northern highlands of Scotland. That's about where it'll be. Maybe a bit into the Grampians as well, but that's going to be about the limits of it. Other places in the world, Norway, Sweden, yeah, and that's about it. United States, Canada, which a lot of my friends are in, absolutely mild. Could be the mildest, warmest Christmas on record.
And you don't mean actual friends, you mean friends who look like you at
Friends
this time.
of Dasher, yeah.
Friends of Dasher. Yeah, I can't take him seriously, but then I never can anyway with that on his head. So that's Jim Dale. Paul Burgess, is he right about some of these predictions? I mean, in your view, you're a climate
Well, I agree. I actually agree that it's going to be in the Kingdoms, and that's it for UK. So I agree with that. But I'm here today really to represent the elves.
I see. There's an elf on your shoulder.
The elf on my shoulder, yeah. They got off the shelf just to get on the shoulder today. And they've got a campaign going for more CO2. And if I could bring up Elf Slide 1, here.
Let's take a look. This is the Elf Slide 1.
Elf Slide 1.
Take a look.
And
so they need...
There we are.
Yeah,
now, look, this is Christmas trees, and the left-hand side there is how much it grows today with the CO2 we've got.
So
it's starving.
So where it's got the elf.
And where it's got the elf is what they want, more CO2. That's a doubling of CO2, roughly, and that's what you get, because these trees grew up with 4 times the CO2 we have today, so the elves want... And they live in trees most of the year. They only go to the North Pole, you know, with Father Christmas time. So they want that. And now we can go to the next elf 2. There we've got what it was like here in the Thames in 1683, where you had 3 foot of ice, and it caused big problems. The elves' hats fell off, and it caused their heads to freeze, as you can see there in the corner. So, you know, they don't like that at all. But it started to warm then from...
Where are you getting this information from then?
Oh, this information is... well, the information for 1683 is a famous painting. I will give quotes on my channel afterwards.
But tell me now, because you're on air on TV.
OK. This painting is a famous 1683 painting by a painter who painted it in 1683.
So that's what we got. So from that picture, we
can I just say that it's also recorded in history that 1830 these ice things stopped. The ice fairs stopped because it had warmed by 1830. So a warming of 160 years went on, and the elves wanted to say, you know, that is the case, and they didn't like it back then. They liked the warm.
Well, I was actually messing about that. I didn't expect that Nana to ask for references for that because it was such a famous painting. So I sort of, you know, was taken off guard there, to be honest. Of course, I'm now going to show you the painting, and I'm now going to give you a bit of background, quite a lot of background now, because the whole point I'm making here, and I know I've only got seconds to make it on the show, is that this was the coldest period in the Holocene. So let's start with this, the Holocene. Now, what is the Holocene? Well, look at this diagram here, and you can see all the different ice ages, you know, past history, as it were, and you can see the gaps between them. And the gaps between what you consider to be ice ages are actually the Holocene, if you like, the gaps. They're between 10 and 15,000 years long. And our civilizations and humanity grew up in our current one, the Holocene. It grew up then, and we're about 11,000 years into it. But they only last for, on average, 10 to 15,000 years. So on that basis, of course, you can expect another ice age within the next 4,000 years. It could be 1,000 years, could be 500 years. We don't know. But it's that short a time. Now, let's actually go inside the Holocene to this diagram. So here you see a diagram of the last 11,000 years. It's the Holocene that we're in now. The hottest temperature was in the Holocene climate optimum, around about 8,000 years ago. There was a very cold period just before that. But as you come along here, you'll see the Roman warm period and the medieval warm period, and then the little ice age that we all know about, and that was worldwide. And what I've been talking about here is trying to explain in simple terms coming out of the Little Ice Age and what's implied by that and how we came out of it. But I had to do this in seconds on the television programme. Very difficult. So here I'm explaining the sort of background to what I'm trying to get over. So the three simple questions are, when was it the coldest in the Little Ice Age? What was the depth of it? Secondly, when did it start to warm? And of course, when did it end? So we need to look at those three questions. And I was trying to explain this in a very, very simple manner, keeping the Christmas spirit in this video. But we'll look at them now properly. Well, according to this temperature graph here, which is the accepted one before the madness of the hockey stick came along, the coldest period was here, which would be about 1650, 1660, around about there, as I've marked on the graph here. And then it warmed quite rapidly, actually, and then cooled a bit again. But it was all over by about 1830, which is when the last of the ice fairs were held. Now, looking at those ice fairs, and I use the image of an ice fair, which I'll show again here, these only occurred occasionally. It wasn't always freezing over like this, and the Thames was different in those days. It was shallower, so, more likely to freeze, if you like. The painting, Thames Frost Fair, by Jan Griffier, shows the River Thames in 1683 with 1 metre, that's 3 feet of ice. It shows a medieval ice fair that was popular during the reign of Elizabeth I. The last fair occurred around 1830s as the Little Ice Age was changing to the modern warm period. Now you need to be aware that when you see a graph like this, you're looking at a smoothed out averaged temperature. You're not looking at weather. You're not even looking at 5 or 10 years. You're looking at smoothed out to show the trends, as it were. So just here, let me impose some real sort of type of data onto that. And you can see that in this short period I've taken there are huge variations. That's weather. That is not climate. What we're looking for in this is the trend in climate. So in this period, as you're recovering out of the Little Ice Age, you can still have colder or warmer times. They can vary by the year. So let's take a look at a pretty famous year, the Great Frost of 1709. The Great Frost, as it was known in England, or La Grande Hiver, the Great Winter, as it was known in France, was an extraordinarily cold winter in Europe in 1708 to 1709, and was the coldest European winter during the past 500 years. Now, I don't necessarily believe that. I think that 500-year claim is a bit extreme. But nevertheless, it was a very cold winter, and it was made famous, really, by the Bank of England, who, look at this. Well, here is the Bank of England in a monetary report. The Monetary Policy Report, the central bank presented rough and ready predictions for the economy, suggesting that the output would slip 3% in the first quarter, followed by a further 25% fall in the second, and this would mean an almost 30% drop overall in the first half of 2020, and the fastest and deepest recession since the Great Frost in 1709. So this 1709 frost was a huge recession, a real landmark. So there were real consequences to the Little Ice Age, and that was only one of them. I just want to reinforce a very important point again here. Natural variations, including ENSO, that's the La Ninas and El Ninos, volcanic activity, etc., can easily cause temperature swings of a degree Celsius from year to year, which is, by the way, what we're talking about since 1850 to now, just over that, and of course decade to decade. But historical proxies don't have the fine resolution to pick these up. They merely give an idea of average temperatures over decades and even centuries. Consequently, you cannot compare 1 year now with the general climate of, say, 2,000 years ago. And this, of course, is what people like Jim and Dale do, and the activists do. They take individual years and then try to make a big deal of them. You cannot do it, and there's no way you can say this is a record, because we simply don't have that fine resolution of the past. It really is important to understand this. Now, having gone through all that, what the important point is how did we warm from that little ice age? Well, we warmed naturally, didn't we? Because by 1830, the 3 foot of ice sort of situation had gone. Well, it was there the last time, and since then, all we've done is warm. But we were warming well before the Industrial Revolution. We were warming from the 1600s. In fact, we were warming around about 160 years before the Industrial Revolution, and even then, the Industrial Revolution put so little in from one little country like the UK that it really didn't get going until about 1960. Now, a really good video to look at on this subject, actually, in this period of warming, is one that's just come out by Tony Heller, and I'm going to link it in the description below this. It explains how the hockey stick and what it's stating is so bad, because glaciers, according to the hockey stick, were actually growing when it was warm, and they were actually receding when it was cold. The exact opposite, of course, of what would normally happen. So please watch that video. But now let's get to my third slide, which I never did get the chance to show on the Nana show, which was bringing everything to this point, and it's based on that infamous hockey stick. And here it is, the infamous hockey stick. And as you can see, we were just getting colder and colder and colder. And, well, until by magic, mankind came along and caused all the warming. Now, let's just see, according to the incredibly wrong world, what would have happened without man. But apparently, what would have happened without man was we'd have got colder and colder and colder, because here there's no medieval warm period, there's no little ice age as such, it was just getting colder and colder. So you could have been enjoying fairs today with 5 feet or 6 feet of ice on the Thames. You could have had great starvation all over the world, because we were in a growing little ice age, because that's what the alternative is to this madness of the alarmists. So even if you accept their story, which of course is false, but if you accept it, then mankind saved the planet. But never mind, that's the point I was trying to make during this 3-slide presentation I'd planned to get in. But I actually travelled, I worked it out, it's a 600-mile round trip for me to get these, and I get about 2 minutes in, so I get 120 seconds. So I work how many miles per second I get out on television. I do it because it's just, I'm the only one on the UK media, if you like, expounding this. I'm the only one allowed to say we need more CO2 and so on. And here I was trying to use Christmas, trying to do fairly light-hearted to expose how absurd all this is. And it is truly absurd. But we'll carry on with the show now.
So, Jim, what are your thoughts on this?
Dash's thoughts. Look, of course, trees like CO2.
Yeah.
But they also like water, and they also don't want a lack of water, which is the problem around the world, including my own area, where we're going into deserts, or you get the opposite, where you get deluges out of thin air. We've seen it many times this year, and we're being wiped out. We've lost half of the herd since 1995 because of the impact of climate change. So 12.5 million caribou, non-existent now, and as I say, in Africa going for extinction, much as many other species across the world due to climate changes. That's why it's not just about humans, it's about...
Now there, Jim mentioned the droughts again. Apparently Canada is being turned into a sort of desert, apparently. Well, I really look forward to seeing the evidence for that. But again, he mentions droughts. I've already shown in the previous episodes that there's no evidence whatsoever of more droughts. In fact, there's no evidence of more floods, more droughts, heavier rainfall, and so on. As per the IPCC themselves say, which he just doesn't accept. And don't forget, this is the man who promised on air to produce more evidence, to produce his evidence to show increasing harm caused by extreme droughts. He couldn't do it, and he couldn't do it because there is no evidence for that. So the rest of it was about the caribou in Canada. So I'll first of all show my response to this, and then I'll examine all he said. But I realise we are seconds away from the end of the show, so there was no chance for me to go into that deluge of disaster, 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 disaster. This is the spin world Jim Dale lives in. He lives in a total spin world that's got no scientific background to it or depth. And he truly, and believe me, I know this from the Green Room episodes, he really does not understand the most basic things about science or climate change, despite calling himself on his site a climate change consultant, which I just find amazing. But here's my quick response, knowing I've only got a few seconds to go, and it's about the trees I was trying to stick to. And anyway, you'll see.
Animal life and others.
As regards when he goes on about trees, because that's my subject here, and Christmas trees and things, what he's going on about is the fact is that the more CO2, the less water you need. Because the trees are starving, and all plants, that's why we've got record crops, so we increase CO2. They're starving. The little thing called stomata in them that breathes in the CO2, they have to have a lot of those. It lets a lot of moisture out, and that's why the Sahara is reducing in size. Far less water is needed with more CO2.
Paul,
Far less water is needed.
He said the Sahara
No, it's not. Have a look at Spain of late. It's going in that direction.
You're looking at weather, Jim, as always, you look at weather, not climate.
The Sahara is extending, much as the polar regions are also going the other way, diminishing. So you're getting it sort of the wrong way round. This is proven science. This is what we're seeing at this moment in time. This is why Dasher and co are having a real problem in the world at this moment in time.
Can I speak to that? Jim, the facts are there's a German study showing clearly how the Sahara is reducing in size because of the extra CO2 we're pumping in. There is no doubt that plants need less water. It's just a scientific fact when they've got more CO2. And that's why we pump CO2 into greenhouses to make them grow much better, right? But we can't afford to go up to the 1,500 in greenhouses. They normally do it to about twice what it is today because of the cost of doing it. So less water is needed right around the world if you have more CO2.
Final quick word to you, Jim Dale, to respond to that.
Water. Let me finish on the snow story, if I may.
Yeah, go on, quickly. Respond.
Can I? The name for somebody who doesn't like snow, who's kind of allergic to it, probably, in other words, it's called chianophobia.
Okay.
Chianophobia is if you don't like snow, that's you out there. We all love it. And I'll tell you what, we might actually get some as we move towards the new year, extending down from the north. So prepare for that one, everybody. I'm going to love it.
Love it. All right, thank you so much. Jim Dale, what are you again?
Dasher.
Dasher. And also Paul Burgess, thank you very much for joining me. Interesting stuff. What do you think?
Okay, let's now dissect a little bit of that Jim Dale extremism, shall we? This is from the Species Risk Education Centre for Caribou in Canada. I quote, "Threats. Over recent years, boreal caribou populations across Canada have declined significantly. This is due to increased predation, which is linked to human-caused habitat disturbance, industrial, commercial and recreational land use, including forestry, roads and other linear features, combined with natural disturbances such as forest fires, natural by the way note, and insect outbreaks, having caused high levels of habitat disturbance in many areas. These disturbances can entirely remove habitat or change it so that it is less suitable for caribou, and can also prevent caribou from accessing important habitat areas such as calving or feeding." Now, everybody has to get on the climate change thing, so I'm actually taking, scientists, what they have to say, the scientific experts have to say. Climate change spells bad news for the reindeer, says experts, and reindeer are, of course, caribou. You see, these experts and these scientists only get paid if they can raise the alarm. No one ever gets paid for saying things are okay, or that climate change is doing no harm, or maybe is a benefit. No one ever gets paid for that. The whole world is just one way on the financing of this. If you want to get your research paper really noted, be extreme, and you get paid more. Simple as that. But here we go. The impact of climate change on food availability is an important reason for changing populations. Fair enough. As warming melts ice and extends growing seasons, there is more opportunity for the plants and the shrubs and that reindeer feed on to grow. But in other places, lichen, one of the reindeer's most important winter foods, is decreasing and putting populations under pressure. Well, what the saying is there, that some warming can have benefits and negatives to it. There's no real evidence that climate change, according to, like Jim, has devastated the reindeer population in Canada. There's no evidence really at all. People can look and clutch at straws, but warming doesn't seem to have done that much damage, whereas habitat removal has. But let's continue. Now, in response to my comment about the Sahara Desert decreasing, Jim replied that it's getting hot or something in Spain, which is just as irrelevant as I can think of. But here is the evidence I was referring to. I'll do two amounts. There's lots of it. This first bit of evidence comes from satellite observation. There's nothing better than looking to see how big or small the Sahara is. And I quote, "Satellite images of the Sahara, the vast belt-shaped region south of Sahara stretching from the Atlantic coast to the Horn of Africa, shows a steady northward march of grasses, shrubs and even trees since the early 1980s. You can carry on and read the rest of that report yourself if you wish." And another reference, the Sahel is greening. However, in sharp contrast to this gloomy outlook, it seems that global warming has exactly the opposite effect on the Sahara and the Sahel. The Sahel, by the way, is the area south of the Sahara that borders it. The Sahara is actually shrinking, with vegetation arising on land where there was nothing but sand and rocks before. The southern border of the Sahara has been retreating since the early 1980s, making farming viable again in what was some of the most arid parts of Africa. There has been a spectacular regeneration of vegetation in North Bucana, I think is spelled Faso, which was devastated by drought and advancing deserts just 20 years ago. It is now growing so much greener that families who fled to wetter coastal regions are starting to come back. There are now more trees, more grassland for livestock, and so it goes on. I've ended my quote there. So there is my evidence, and so what do I get in counter that? I get that Spain has had a hot time in the south of Spain this year. I'm lost for words sometimes with Jim. Well, I think that's about a wrap-up for this session. I hope you enjoyed it. I always try to do them after each show. What I'm trying to do now is expand on it so that I'm helping, in effect, to train people to fight the madness of the world we're in. I can say this, that when I get back from this, I'm always whacked. It's a long session and I've got to do a lot of work afterwards and beforehand sometimes. And I got back to this one to a comment from a Howard Klein, whose comment from one of my videos I'm just going to put up after this. And that encouraged me because it made me feel as if what I'm doing is worthwhile. And if I just help people to counter the madness, because, where else are they going to go? There are a number of places. And maybe I do it easier and differently. I don't know. I try to do it so that everyone can understand it. That's what I try to do. If you understand science, and even if you're a super expert at science and you can't explain it, then I'm sorry, you don't even know it then. You should always be able to explain science to anybody, even children. Okay, you simplify it and round it off a bit, but that's what it is. There's nothing complicated, really, about climate science. Anyway, there we are. Now, I do have now a Patreon account. I was asked by a particular pushy supporter to do one. And the reason I've done it is I am getting, quite a lot of expenses in the work I do. And I go and give talks, I do various things, and very rarely, I never get paid for my time in anything I do, and I don't want to be. But to recover expenses would be a nice thing to do. So if you want to support the work, by all means, go to the Patreon link below and do so. There is no benefit to doing so. I don't offer you any extra perks or anything. It is simply if you wish to support to my expenses. I will promise this, if ever I reach the stage of recovering my expenses, I'm about £4,000 down now. If I ever reach the stage of doing that, I will stop, because I don't want to be paid for my time. I do this as a passion, not for an income, as it were. So there I am, and I'm going to leave you with the words of Howard Klein and why I found his post to be really encouraging at a time when I was very tired after a long day getting back from the last trip. Thank you for watching. This is from Howard Klein. Keep up the good work, Paul. Some of us, like me, with electronics and radio comms background, can cut through the BS with basic arithmetic and knowledge. I've been banging my head against a brick wall of sheeple for years, and your video gives me strength to carry on in my small way. Now, I just found that very encouraging. It made my day worthwhile. And I'd like to thank Howard for picking me up at the end of the day. Again, thank you all for watching. Bye.